Hey y'all, and welcome to another edition of Confederate Shop's Hidden Gem. This is where I take one book out of my library per week and I tell you why you need to have it in your library. Now this week's book is very similar to last week. It is written by a Confederate veteran. Last week we had a Southern view of the invasion. This week it is The Men in Gray, written by Robert Catlett Cave. Now Cave was a member of the 13th Virginia Infantry, and he served all throughout the war. After the war, he became a preacher. Like many educated Southerners, he felt that it was needful to tell his side of the story, as the victors often write the history books that what history books were teaching at the time in the early 1900s was very much so a Northern narrative. Southerners, especially Confederate veterans, felt it, took responsibility upon themselves to teach the posterity, the Southern posterity, their children, what the truth of the war was. So this is why Robert Catlett Cave wrote this book, The Men in Gray. He gives a wonderful defense of the Southern perspective, and what makes this book different from other narratives is he's going to dive deeper into the philosophical, the theological difference between the New England Puritan and the Southern Cavalier, and how those two cultures were separate and how they clashed, what led them to clash together. So it's kind of a different perspective than some of the other narratives that you'll read. This book, by modern academia, would be considered the lost cause myth or the lost cause narrative, which, as we know by now, Southerners do, that the lost cause narrative is actually the truth about the war. That there wasn't this grand conspiracy after the war that Southerners were somehow all together to lie about why they fought. No, they're very clear and precise about why they fought, and he explains it perfectly in The Men in Gray. So he is going to debunk the slavery myth, and he's going to talk about the other issues involved and why the Men in Gray fought. So this is a wonderful book to have in your collection. It is a historical reprint. It was reprinted, I believe, in 1911. Let me double check that. Yeah, 1911. I was right about that. And we have it for fairly inexpensive on our website. This is a reprint that we did ourselves. We reprinted it ourselves. And it's going to be on sale this weekend only, so grab yourself a copy now. And I do want to remind folks, a lot of times, I don't know how many of these I'm going to sell. I could sell a dozen. Sometimes I could sell 50. I never really know. Sometimes I run out. So if you place an order and you end up waiting a week, you may have to wait a week or two because I sell out kind of fast. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that. So get it while you can. The Men in Gray by Robert Catlett Cave. Thank you.